Right, so I'm going to call the City of Lake Elmo City Council meeting Tuesday, March 4th to order. If you please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, item B, after the call to order and pledge, is approval of agenda. I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as written, or if somebody has something else in mind, feel free to speak up.
Motion to approve the agenda as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for approval of the agenda as written. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Agenda is hereby approved. Don't believe we have any general presentations this evening. We do have someone that would like to speak during public comments and inquiries. When I call your name, please address the podium. You'll state your address, and you'll have 6 minutes to speak. Ms. Wendy Griffin.
6 minutes,
Yeah, we're generous.
double. Oh, did you just?
Yeah, I just called you. Miss Wendy Griffin.
You lost 15 seconds.
Well, good evening, Mayor Cadenhead and council members. I'm here to say thank you to the mayor for reaching out to Washington County Parks, especially the one that runs on the west side of Lake Elmo Lake. We did have a meeting with them. We will be working with them, and they gave us some information on a grant that we will be applying for. We wrote it out yesterday. It is due on April 4th. I'm here to ask, as a partnership with the city, and I'm not exactly sure what that is, but we had to list partners, and so we listed the city of Lake Elmo, and it's for the 3M PFABs Settlement Priority 2 Grant Program, which was sent to us by the county. And I sent an email off today to Wayne Sandberg for him, and I'll be going to the Valley Branch meeting a week from Thursday. So they've been warned I'm coming to see if we can help partner with them, but that's what I'm here for. I'd just like to say thank you so much. It was great being able to meet with the county, and we got some great work done, and I appreciate your time in doing that. And sorry it's taken so long to get here, but we just had the meeting. It takes a while to get things done, so. Does anybody have, oh, I forgot to tell you where I'm from. 2835 Lake Elmo Avenue. And I'm the president of the Lake Elmo Lake Association. Any questions?
During this time, we typically don't do talk back and forth, but we've
Oh.
got your information, and somebody from staff will reach out to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right?
You guys all have a fun evening.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hope you get it done quickly.
Yes, right.
Motion to adjourn.
Denied.
Trust me, I've been in here.
Yeah. All right, so item E is approval of the minutes, which we got a copy in our packet for the February 18th, 2025 special meeting and regular meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve those as written unless somebody found something amiss.
Motion to approve the minutes from February 18th, 2025, special meeting and regular meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from referenced meetings. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Minutes are approved. On the consent agenda this evening, we have approved payment of disbursements and payroll, approved liquor license for Oshi Sushi, approved Ballfield purchase agreement amendment resolution 2025-020, approved Kleis playground replacement, approved Highpointe crossing preliminary plat extension resolution 2025-017, and approved charitable gambling permit for Oakdale Athletic Association, Resolution 2025-018. With that, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
Motion to approve consent agenda.
Second.
All right, all those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 Consent agenda is approved. Item 8 under G, under our regular agenda, is irrigation alternatives for Lake Oakland, that's, should be Oakland Middle School. Mr. First.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I will pull this presentation up. Just got a couple slides to share with you this evening. So this item is really intended to be a discussion item for the City Council. This is a follow-up from the Oakland Middle School project where the city did approve a conditional use permit, minor subdivision and variances for the Oakland Middle School expansion. So as background, all of those things were approved in October of 2024. With the city's conditional approval of the project, it did require an irrigations alternatives assessment, effectively a look at the different alternatives to irrigate the site. And so that was delivered by the school district's team in November of '24. And then the school district's team switched to working on the final construction plans for the site, which were recently submitted. And now that they were submitted, we've kind of gone back to that irrigations alternative memo and tried to make sure that it's answering the questions that the city council was intending to ask. So there were some additional areas of information that were identified, and we requested a bit more detail. And a new memo dated February 28th was provided by the school district's team and put in the staff report for your review. So as a little bit of background for you on irrigation on the middle school property, you'll see the image on the screen shows an aerial that kind of shows you that a good delineation of where the irrigation is taking place. Mostly on those sports fields, about 7 acres are currently irrigated by a well. The site served by a well that was constructed in 1966. That well is very much at the end of its useful life, and the school district is looking to replace it. The current water use for this property for irrigation is just a little bit under 16,000 gallons per day. If you look at a kind of a residential equivalent of households water use, that's, depending on the assumptions that you make, of course, right around 45 Lake Elmo households. So that's kind of how that stacks up for water use. So I just have the site plan in case we want to reference this. Shows you a couple of areas where this building is being expanded. All right, so what were the alternatives that were reviewed? So first and foremost, looking at using the city's water supply. The school district's expansion was conditioned to connect to city water. And they're proposing to use the city's water supply to irrigate their ball fields as they do currently. The next option is to construct a new well because the existing well needs to be replaced. The third option would be to look at some type of a stormwater reuse system. The fourth option, to construct a pumping system to use water from Rose Lake. And the fifth option, of course, is to do nothing or to not irrigate the fields and effectively abandon the existing irrigation system. So sorry, the text got a little bit small on this slide, but this is kind of how that analysis kind of broke down. Again, the school's preference is to use the city's water for irrigation purposes. There wouldn't be any real additional costs to their project as they're already connecting to city water, and it's not difficult to connect that to their existing system. And this would be treated water, obviously, provided by the city. It would be subject to any city standards requiring irrigation time and place restrictions. The other option is to construct that new well. Again, that's just over $200,000 in terms of a cost that was projected by the district. There are PFAS concerns with new wells, and so it's unclear what permitting authorities, to me at least, what they would say about PFAS and health. The next option, looking at the stormwater reuse system, that's the most expensive alternative for irrigation. That would be over $300,000 and would include some, I think, pretty considerable retrofits to the design of the site, the plans, the building, in order to basically capture the stormwater that comes down onto the site redirecting that water from building downspouts in areas like that. The last thing, again, that's been considered is looking at a pumping system from Rose Lake, again, to over $200,000. There could potentially be PFAS or other health-related concerns from pumping from a lake like that. Not quite sure what the permitting requirements are either in that case. The last option, again, to abandon the existing irrigation and just not irrigate those fields. Just wanted to provide a little bit of like overview for irrigation reuse and how this has been required or whether it's been required in the past. So currently this stormwater irrigation systems are not required by the city code, although they have been implemented in a number of projects. Primarily this has been through PUD benefits or through projects that have received PUDs from the city. The other reason that developments have incorporated these systems is to meet watershed rules. So they're able to meet their Valley Branch requirements. To actually put a requirement in city code for these systems would be challenging. There are a number of factors that we would have to really look at pretty hard before we could write a good code requirement. That includes where are these developments that are coming in? What's the size of the site? What's the irrigable area versus the impervious surface that's on a site? How does that all kind of stack up? What are the soils and what are the best options on a particular site for stormwater ponding? Some developments, it makes the most sense to infiltrate stormwater. So if you don't have a wet pond, you don't have that water supply. The other consideration is more of long-term maintenance and operations. Typically, these systems have to be maintained by some type of entity into the future, and so that would necessitate HOAs and other types of arrangements. And lastly, who would a requirement apply to? Would it be for exclusively new development, or could it be also for expansions and retrofits of existing sites? So those are some of the things that would really have to be considered before making a requirement. So at this point, what staff are looking for is some discussion from the city council and hopefully a determination that we've at least got enough information through this irrigations assessment for the school district to move forward with their project. That would allow the staff to move forward with those final construction plans. So at this time, I am happy to stand for your questions. The school district's team has braved the elements to be here tonight to answer any questions you have for them too. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. First. Questions for Mr. First? Mr. Holtz?
Can you go back to the estimated usage numbers?
Is this the slide?
Yeah. So I presume the district is aware the water is not free. Okay. Has the current cost been provided? I assume so because Lake Elmo Elementary pays for water.
Yeah, so presumably they're paying water bills at other facilities, so they would have an idea of cost.
And in terms of the cost for a well, was that based upon an estimate of a well that would be sized just for irrigation?
That question, I don't know the answer to. I'd have to defer to their engineer. I'm hearing replace what's existing on site.
I have comments that aren't questions, so I'm
Right.
determining.
Councilmember Dragisich?
Yeah, we have an analysis of the capital cost, right? We have nothing on the operational cost of each alternative. As my former council, my other council pointed out, what does the water cost? 16,000 gallons a day for irrigation, okay, we can estimate that cost, but what's the operating cost of the other alternatives? And on net present value, which has the lowest net present value cost, which we haven't seen? It's hard to make a decision strictly on, construction costs.
Was there a question there, Councilmember Dragisich?
That was my question. Have they done an operational
Have you done
cost?
an operational cost?
Because hasn't been presented.
Right.
No, what we have is what's in the memo appended to the staff report.
Okay. Councilmember Hearn.
I guess my question would be, is the school district open to amending this? If we feel that there should be a different alternative that we go, again, from the language here, it doesn't look like you really have to do anything. We can make a suggestion to amend it, and you can say, no, thank you. Are you open to considering if we even do make an amendment to this? Or is this is the final decision for you guys?
From a district perspective, we're looking at number 10 on the conditional use permit to provide, assessment of the irrigation alternatives. Our plan is to go with number 1 to be on city sewer and water. We do not plan on doing any 2, 3, or 4, so if number 1 is not accessible, we would move to not irrigate the site.
Follow up.
Councilmember Holtz.
So question, because I ran the numbers, not I, someone much smarter than I ran the numbers. That you say it was for 4 to 6 months, you're looking at 10 to 12,000 a year just for the water cost. I'm just wondering if the thought of a new sized well that's appropriate for irrigation, not for the whole school, was considered for that versus the cost to pay for city water for irrigation.
It's in terms of kind of running 2 systems, and so where those come from, I turn to our team here to kind of run that assessment of those numbers.
Hello, I'm Greg Blukall with Larson Engineering, civil engineer for the project. We did not look at the operational costs as you asked earlier. As far as the well costs, we talked to well drillers, try to get a cost that would be something similar to what the well that they currently have would cost.
Okay. Anything else? Councilmember Hearn?
Well, when you talk about the life of the well is near its end, are there dates that kind of can go along with that? Obviously, you can't predict. Are we thinking a year, 3 years, tomorrow?
I guess I could use the analogy of a car from what we've heard from the district.
Okay.
As a car gets older, you tend to make more repairs, cost you more money to keep it running. That's kind of the impression that we got from the district when we talked to them about the well. So they were putting more money into it to try to keep it going.
Okay.
Mr. First, underneath, do you know, underneath our fee schedule for water, does this fall under, and my computer's really starting to upset me, it's jumping around for some reason. I didn't even touch it, it starts moving.
Do you have a mouse?
Does this fall under commercial water use, or what would this fall underneath?
I'll have to look over to,
Irrigation.
so for a commercial facility or not residential.
Correct.
Irrigation, water use, okay. Thank you.
So what I'm hearing from you, Mr. First, is the question before us is not what we think should be done. The question before us is if we think the study was complete.
Yeah, so we're really looking at that conditional use permit approval and trying to understand, do we have enough information? What direction would the city council like to move is kind of the question that I have in order to make sure that we kind of have what we need to move forward.
Okay,
You see that motion again, please?
And I guess I asked that question because I went and rewatched the meeting and our discussion that we had for what led to the creation of this number 10 on the CUP. And I guess we both made it pretty clear what the intent was, that the intent was not to necessarily have a plan. The intent was to determine what the plan will be for how to move, how to have irrigation that's not on city water. And you had mentioned, well, we just need to find out what's possible, because it might not be possible. So I'm just curious, in this case, every alternative is possible. Every one of those is possible, it's just some of them have a cost impact. But every one of them is possible, there's not one that's not feasible. But what I'm hearing from staff is the interpretation that we don't have the ability to dictate which one shall occur of the four.
Correct.
At least not in an easy way, I would say.
I'm gonna try to make a motion here. Motion to amend the information provided in the Stillwater Area Public Schools District's Irrigation Alternatives Review memo dated February 27, 2025. I don't know if we need my amendment stated in that motion.
First, you need a second.
Well,
It's not finished yet.
yeah, so, motion to amend for an alternative besides municipal water to be selected by the school district from their memo. Is that clear enough?
No, I don't think so, not for me. Are you
I'd like
asking
them
them?
to amend it without choosing municipal water as their option for irrigating.
Second.
And it doesn't have to, oh, yeah, sorry.
All right, so we have a motion and a second.
I guess if,
Discussion.
yeah, so, yeah, I wish, obviously, looking back at this in hindsight, maybe that we would have made that condition a little bit more clear. We've been very consistent with any development that's been done in the last 2 years that stormwater reuse for irrigation really is a must. Even though I suppose it's not in the ordinances, that has been something that's been done by all, I believe, all the other developments that we've approved in the last few years here, last couple of years. I feel that's wrong. Maybe we can't do anything more at this point. That's unfortunate because that's the precedent we've set for all these developments as we're trying to protect our water quantity with the issues that we have. We have irrigation bans as a result of this that we're asking residents of the city. So I think this is unfortunate that if we do go that way, that the school district can't look to make an alternative option work here. You know, as I was thinking through this, I guess my thought initially is, okay, make the private well last as long as possible. If that's 2-3 years down the road, surface water might be coming down the road. You can make the decision at that time, do we want to wait? Do we want to drill for a new well? Do we want to put in field turf? Is there another option? I just, it's unfortunate because I feel like as a city, we've really been asking everybody to contribute to this, and they have been, whether that be through their irrigation bans or through the developers using the stormwater reuse. And people have been working together to do that. I wish the school district could do that as well. I understand that it's a financial obligation, and it doesn't look like that by any means you're required to. Yeah, I just would like to see maybe the school district try to kind of step up in this situation as well and stick with what the rest of the community's been stepping up with here as well in this situation as we're dealing with some of the water situations that we do currently have.
I don't have anything smart to add to that. I think that was well said.
I guess when I look at the language that we have in there, it's not a, we don't have it dictated that it, I mean, I agree, we should be taking opportunities to be efficient with our water use. I don't know that we have anything in our ordinances that dictate that it has to be one or the other, is the problem I have with the motion saying you have to come back with something other than that. For me, the practical, or the reality is that they met the ordinance that we have, so I don't know that I can, while I agree with it, I don't know that I can support it, if that makes sense.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
one thing I might suggest, one of the conditions in the conditional use permit is prior to approval of the final construction plans, they must complete the assessment of irrigation alternatives for the site. So that's what they're bringing to you tonight. And I guess the question is, it's kind of up to the city to approve the final construction plans. So I guess council could direct staff that, that one of the conditions of the construction plans be that they have an alternative to city water for their irrigation. And that might get you, because you do, I mean, the city does need to approve the construction plans and also the site improvement agreement.
Timing-wise, when does that happen?
I think very soon.
Plans have been submitted currently under review.
So we're talking very soon.
Yep, it could be this week.
Question for council. With the motion that's been amended, what are your, would you advise us that the motion as amended does not align with what is possible with number 10? And maybe we should instead focus on a discussion about, again, the building plans instead?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think right now what the city has control, I mean, obviously you've agreed to the condition and the conditional use permit, but you do have control of the approval of the final construction plans. So I think that's what you kind of need to give staff direction on.
I'll rescind my second.
So, then we're back to needing a motion.
Move to accept the information provided in the Stillwater Area Public School District's Irrigation Alternatives Review Memo dated February 27, 2025.
I'll second that. Discussion.
Can you just, oh, sorry. At some point, I want that clarified a little bit. I guess I kind of didn't quite fully understand.
He can do it now.
Okay.
Yep, so on this one, we can amend this motion to then discuss the building plans, or we could do it as a new motion. I assume you'd
Okay.
prefer a new motion. Well, the information provided does provide information on the alternatives. So it does meet what was put in the CUP. I guess I'll take ownership for not being more clear in the meeting about our intent. That's on me. But yeah, I guess for this motion does meet the requirements.
Yeah, I think that we can address that at a future date and offer up some language that's pertinent in some other areas that we do this to show variances from what we're looking at or what we think is important for the city, right? So to show a hardship or things of that nature.
Just a question for Councilman Holtz. Does that meet the requirements even though there's not operational cost listed?
The way the CUP requirement number 10 was just show what alternatives look like.
Got it. Okay.
I guess that was the way we. So it appear from the district's standpoint that their intent is to go on to city water and then pay the 10 to 12,000 a year for city water to irrigate.
Irrigation. Yep. And still needs to abide by our irrigation rules, right? Twice a week, certain hours, yada, yada, right? Okay. All right. Any more discussion on that?
I guess I'm still a little unclear. So from council's, was that a separate motion that we're talking about that we'd have to bring up for
And the construction plans?
construction plans?
I believe so, yes. Is that right?
You can do it either way.
Yeah.
And I apologize. Can you explain that one more time? So the thought process on that was,
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the condition in the conditional use permit says prior to the approval of the final construction plans, they have to complete this assessment of irrigation alternatives for the site. I think we all agree that they've done that, but the city does need to approve the final construction plans. And let's say there's something in the construction plans that you don't like, which sounds like there might be if they're proposing hooking up to city water for irrigation purposes, and that's something the council doesn't want to see, then you could direct staff to not approve the final construction plans if it's showing them connecting to city water.
okay. And when do we see the construction plans?
You don't.
Okay,
You would direct staff to make sure that the construction plans are showing something other than
Got it.
hooking up to city water.
thank you.
All right, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the information provided in the Stillwater Area Public Schools District Irrigation Alternatives Review memo dated February 27th, 2025, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion stands.
Well, how about the opposition, because that's me. Aye.
Okay,
I'm opposed to the motion.
all right. Thank you, Mr. Dragisich. Passes 4-1. So then we move on to Roers Easement Vacation, Resolution 2025-019.
Mr. Mayor, does the council want to make a motion on the directing staff about the plans or not?
We could add that on the end, could we not?
We've already made the motion and it's over with. It's been voted upon.
Right,
Yeah, you could do another motion to.
yeah, right.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna mess it up. Motion to direct staff to review, nope, okay, here we go. Jeff, you got it.
I
You
believe the
take it.
intent would be motion to direct staff to deny a building plan that has irrigation using city water.
Elegant, thanks.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion, Councilmember Holtz.
The hard part about this is I firmly disagree with the entire reason why we're even doing this. We all know the court case is absurd. It defies common sense, it defies statistics, and yet it remains in effect. So this has nothing to do with the applicant. It does not. But the White Bear Lake lawsuit remains in place, and we have been very consistent. The only time with a new development that wasn't on stormwater was where the applicant was able to show that they could not do stormwater reuse. In this case, all the alternatives are available, but there is a cost. So I fully understand that it's frustrating, but this is the fault of a single judge who made a horribly flawed decision. That's where the cause of this is. And I've talked with legislators as well to make them aware that these types of situations are going to be coming up. Montemita School District is talking with the Montemita City Staff about alternatives as well for irrigation at their high school, because they're running the same issue. Irrigating on fields where you're using municipal water. So you are not alone in this situation. I wish we weren't in this situation whatsoever, but until we have our long-term solution that comes from the East Metro Water Group, which the ideas won't even be presented to the legislature until the summer of '27, I'm gonna be consistent on this and say that alternatives need to be used when they are possible.
Anybody else for discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to direct staff to deny construction plans that include hookup to city water?
Can we talk about this more?
I am fine with it, but.
That's fine.
Getting back to my initial comments, talking about 1 or 5. So if this is a condition, what point can we be here to say, you know what, we have numerous schools in our district that does not do irrigation. We have schools here within Lake Elmo that's not gonna have irrigation. So if we disconnect and say we're not gonna irrigate, then how does that interplay with this?
You would meet the condition because you're not irrigating with city water,
Okay.
which again, and I said this last time, I cringe at because it's a player safety issue for me as well. Playing on dirt is not equitable for kids, and it can potentially be not safe. So I hate that the judges putting us in this position. I hate it. But that's why I made the motion. Be consistent.
All right. The motion again is direct staff to deny construction plans that include hookup to city water for irrigation. Adding that at the end.
For irrigation.
Yeah. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, moving on to number 9 is the Roers easement vacation.
All right, the next item, I'm just gonna actually refer to the staff report, bring that up. Okay, so Roers Companies has made an easement vacation request. This is associated with the city attorney's plat opinion. There are 3 easements that Roers is proposing to vacate. Those 3 easements were provided in that sketch that was in the staff report. I'll kind of page through these different easements. They're all along the southern property boundary of the Roers project, and I think most are familiar with that location. You've got a 15-foot easement from the southern property boundary in the southwest corner of the Roers site. You've got a 15-foot easement again, from the southern property boundary towards the center to the southeast of the site. And then on the far southeast corner, you've got a 10-foot easement from the southern property boundary. And so in order to clean up the property, kind of legal description, or really just the clean up the property for the future, and to be consistent with the city attorney's plat opinion, Roers Companies has proposed to vacate those easements. Those easements, I would note to you, are being replaced by a significantly larger drainage and utility easement that will serve the city's needs for drainage and utility easement purposes. So staff are supportive of the easement vacation request. There was a public hearing posted for this as required by statute in the newspaper, and those affected parties were notified. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you have about this. And I know Roers is also here this evening if you have questions for them.
Any questions? All right,
So we do have a public hearing.
yep. I'll entertain the motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and a second to go in a public hearing. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're in public hearing at 7:41 PM. Anybody wish to speak at the public hearing regarding the Roers easement vacation? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are out of open, public hearing, one of those things.
Move to adopt Resolution 2025-019, approving the Roers easement vacation request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of adopting Resolution 2025-019, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the Fire Department Annual Report. Chief Kalis.
All right, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight I've got Assistant Chief Anthony Spoto with me, who did most of the heavy lifting on putting most of the data together and kind of putting the whole document that you see in front of you. Very similar to last year, we just wanted to get in front of you and present kind of last year's data and kind of wrap it all up and provide you time to go through it, and then also provide the opportunity if you had questions and if there was some more insight needed or a deeper dive into some of the things that we provided. This would be the time to do it. So the biggest thing for us is just, we have a ton of data and we want to be able to use it. And we want to use it in our operations, we want to use it in our planning. We wanted to use it in nights like our strategic planning. So we have a bunch of data that we compile. We put it together in a format that's easy to read, easy to follow. And hopefully we, year by year, we can see the trends and see where things are going. Again, we always want to be transparent and clear with what we're doing and how we're doing things. We feel that an annual report's the best way to do that and kind of throw everything together in one spot for us as we move forward into 2025 and beyond. Our current department roster right now is made up of 37 personnel, which is pretty incredible. When I started, we had just shy of 20 people on our roster. We've made significant growth and have seen a lot of new opportunities for our fire department staff. So I do like to just extend my thanks to Assistant Chief Savoda, our captains Jeremy Penman and Mike Schwartz, our Lieutenant Doug Lovett, and then our 6 career staff who work the shifts here, and then the other 20-plus paid-on-call members that work shifts as well. We have a great staff right now. We continue to grow and continue to evolve, but that kind of makes up what your fire department is right now with those people. We get into our operations. We look at the big number. We look at how many runs, what did we go on last year, what did we respond to last year? So last year we had 1,137 calls for service. Does that mean every single time one of those is happening that everybody goes out? No, we've changed our operational model over the past year, but it gives you a breakdown of kind of what we're doing. As we get into 25 and really got into 24, we had a lot of new stuff coming into our department. We had a new station, we had a new organizational and staffing model. 2024 really let us get into those new things. And as we enter 2025, it allows us to kind of settle in and get used to what's going on. What you see with our overall responses in 2024, medical responses, EMS responses still are the number one. Last year we had 681 emergency medical responses, and then you see the other breakdown. They're broken down by category, and that's kind of through our incident reporting, our incident management software that breaks these down at a national level and a national standard. 58 fire responses, 122 motor vehicle crashes / rescues. Hazardous conditions, 47, and that could be anything from a wire down to gas leak, all sorts of different things can get lumped into there. 55 service calls, 107 good intent or smoke type scare incidents, 66 false alarms or malfunction of an alarm system, and then one weather or disaster-related incident. And you can see the trend. As we continue to grow and develop as a city, our responses will go up. Last year in 2023, previous year, 2023, we were at 1,047 calls. Last year at 1,137. So we're gonna continue to trend upwards. And I don't see anything really slowing that down. You know, as we add more rooftops and we add more properties and we just become busier around here, you know, those numbers will continue to rise. This is one of the things we talked about a couple weeks ago in strategic planning. We put our responses on the map to kind of show you where they're at and where we're responding in the community. It's pretty generalized. We break it down into, right here, 6 different areas, just to kind of give you an example where calls are at and where they kind of compile. Highway 36 intersection, we have 102 incidents in that area. That's Keats, Lake Elmo Avenue, Manning. In our Old Village area, we have 258 incidents. Southeast, Cimarron, Oakland Middle School area, 147 incidents. Park Reserve accounted for 36 incidents last year. Hudson Boulevard is is definitely our busiest area of the city. When you look at from Keats to Inwood and what we have going on there, we have the Springs, we have Boulder Ponds, we have Highpointe Surgery Center, Health Partners, Holiday Inn. That's 363 incidents in that area. And then Hidden Bay, Tri-Lakes, 120 incidents. So we definitely spread out our responses throughout the city, but we are seeing significant impacts to the southern edge of our response area.
All right, so the chief mentioned that when we break down calls and incidents, it's based on the national system. So we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into those categories and just kind of talk about some of the specifics in those call areas. So the first one here is the fire suppression section, which self-explanatory, talks about the fires that we responded to in the city, including mutual aid or automatic aid to our neighboring communities as well. We help our partners out and they help us. We'll talk about that later. But in 2024, your Lake Elmo Fire Department responded to 58 fires, which included 31 structures, which is a pretty significant call volume for structure fires. It doesn't necessarily mean that we're burning houses down completely to the basement. It just means that there was a fire in a building, we responded and put it out. Straightforward. The next category is our rescue category, which includes car accidents, technical rescues, and so on. An interesting number here, with the 93 car accidents that we had in our city last year, 9 of them required an advanced or technical extrication, which means that we had to use what might be known as the jaws of life or other cutting tools to forcefully remove a person from a vehicle. In almost all of those cases, that meant that they were severely injured and required that extra level of care. We're seeing an interesting trend there. 9 is a pretty high number, we feel. It compares to the previous years as an anomaly, but we're seeing more trends in our city as traffic patterns continue to change and grow, that we're getting more significant car accidents. And then down the line there, you can see that we responded to a variety of other calls, including 2 water or ice rescue related incidents.
And I look ahead as we get prepared for a Highway 36 project at Lake Elmo Avenue that, you know, once construction's complete and then intersection's completely different, you know, that we should see these numbers go down, especially for that area. But where numbers go down in one area, we see numbers increase at another. You know, as Hudson Boulevard gets busier and busier, we see more and more significant accidents on the south end of town as well. The 9 extrications is very abnormal. I said midway throughout the year that this is a weird year. I've never experienced that we're actually doing this much cutting to get access to people and people out of the cars in my entire 20 years in the fire service. It was just a very abnormal year. Hopefully it was an abnormally, it's not something that we're, you know, gonna see as the norm.
All right, the next 2 sections here are shared on this page, which include hazardous conditions calls and then the public service good intent and false alarms. The numbers are there. You can see that we do respond to a fair number of these types of incidents. One that we get questions on occasionally on the service calls is police matter, and we had 3 of those incidents. Basically, occasionally we'll be dispatched to a call when maybe we didn't really need to be, there was misinformation about what was happening there, and it was strictly a police-only incident. We weren't able to categorize it as something else. But that one does come up occasionally. 67 false fire alarms and carbon monoxide alarms. That includes commercial and residential properties. Hazardous conditions incidents. Anytime we have a storm that goes through, we see our share of the power line calls, including electrical wires arcing in trees and so on. I'm sure we'll see some tonight as weight of the snow starts to pile up on some tree branches. One lightning strike that did occur last year in our city that did not result in a fire. So a house was struck by lightning, but it didn't start on fire. And then we have medical. So your fire department is right in line with the Minnesota standard, which shows that 63% of our calls are medical related in nature. We responded to, what was the total number? I don't have it on here. 600 and some odd medical calls. The stat there, hold on, I have the number. That's okay. 600, no, anyway. The stat there is interesting because 680 or whatever the number was shows that that's at least 2 medical calls per day plus the fire calls on top of that. And so when we're dealing with a high number of incidents, whether they're fire or medical related, when you start having more calls than you have days in a year, you start to deal with overlapping calls. And so that is something that we have plans for and we are dealing with, but the medical numbers are high. 22 of your 37 firefighters are EMTs, including all of our career staff. We provide basic life support service, which basically means that we are all capable of doing CPR, providing basic airway support, AED train, so on and so on. Go to the next page if you would, please. Our partnership, though, is with Lakeview Hospital Ambulance, and so they provide the advanced life support ambulance service to the city, and they are paramedics. They have 2 paramedics in all the ambulances that they respond into our city with. It's important to know that an ambulance is not stationed in Lake Elmo, so depending on where the medical call is, the ambulance could come from North St. Paul, it could come from Oak Park Heights or Hudson. So when you talk about that south of 10th Street area, typically your ambulance is coming from Hudson. So a key factor there is that 652 times of the 715 total medical calls or ambulance shared response calls that we had in 2024, we arrived 91% ahead of the time, ahead of the ambulance. So that's a big number for us. It shows that we're committed to providing that first aid response, providing that basic life support, and then providing that standard of care until the ambulance arrives, which, depending on where it comes from, can be a significant amount of time.
So one of the things we worked on when obviously we moved into the central station, had career staff who are now living and working out of the station and on shift, is our response times. We know with our geography at 25 plus square miles that we can only do so much given wherever the nature of the calls or where the call's being at and where we have to go to. One of the things that we can definitely make an improvement on is when we get notified of a call, how quickly can we get on the road and put ourselves en route to go respond. Our average alarm to en route time last year in 2024 was 1.25 minutes. And we meet with staff quarterly and we know that there's still some areas of improvement in there. As we talk to staff, it's interesting. We have 60 seconds for EMS calls and 90 seconds for fire calls. And there's always a little misconception on how long is really 1 minute. Sometimes 1 minute actually turns out to 2. And so we definitely still have some room for improvement there as we kind of still learn to operate. But a lot of these numbers too are impacted on what else are we doing in that moment, We keep our staff very busy on their shift, so they're constantly doing something else other than just sitting there and waiting for the call. They're not in the truck. If they're in the hose tower putting hose away or training or doing the forcible entry prop, it takes some time to stop what they're doing, get your gear, get on the truck and go. we stress urgency, we stress, you know, getting out the door as fast as we can. But then when we also see is when we're on a call and we have overlapping calls, it still takes some time for us to basically acknowledge the call and break away if we can from that incident or dispatch another unit or our processes through that. So our travel time in 2024 was 7.49 minutes, and that's simply just due to geography. You know, we go to the south end of town and we get a call up in the lakes. There's nothing we can do to make that better other than just it takes us, you know, we leave right now and it takes us 9 minutes to get to Boulder Ponds. It just, in the best conditions, it takes a while to get around. But we have the staff in the building, we have staff on the trucks where we can, and we have response protocols that helps kind of, you know, chip away at that time when we can, and we'll continue to make improvements on that. Anthony talked a little bit earlier on how we receive aid and how we provide aid to other communities. You know, we have a staff, we have a shift on right now, but that doesn't mean we have all the people in-house that's gonna be able to handle any given scene or any given incident. Structure fires demand, you know, a large number of resources and more resources than what we can provide even of our best efforts with everybody in-house. So we have auto aid agreements and mutual aid agreements with our neighboring communities and jurisdictions. Our city's broken up in 4 quadrants, so depending on the section of town, we have different fire departments that automatically respond to those areas on a confirmed structure fire. So we have departments like Oakdale and Stillwater that cover our entire city. We have Woodbury that automatically comes with those 2 on the south end of the town. We have Bayport that comes to anything on the 2 eastern quadrants. The Tri-Lakes area is a little more challenging because we don't have hydrants, and that's a very resource-heavy area. So we have Montemedi and North St. Paul added into that mix, along with Oakdale and Stillwater and a Bayport tender coming that way. So we have planning involved to make sure that, you know, we have all the necessary resources to give us the best chance we can get. But when you look at the breakdown, we utilized auto aid agreements 85 times in 2024. The biggest number is with Stillwater because we have an auto aid agreement, a shared agreement with Highway 36. We get dispatched on Highway 36, and we started this with the Manning Interchange Project because it really cut off access for Stillwater to get there. We don't really know all the time, or our 911 callers might not be 100% sure where they're at on the highway. So getting resources on the road quickly from us from the south and Stillwater from the north, we're able to kind of get both staffed crews out on the road pretty quickly. And if we don't need those resources, we can cancel them and get them off the road. But frankly, what we're seeing with traffic incidents, we need a few more resources just to provide scene protection, blocking, and we can provide that as we work together. In 2024, we did start going to all of Woodbury for a confirmed structure fire, so that's why their numbers are up quite a bit. And that, I don't believe that number is necessarily gonna drop, but their staffing model will continue to evolve in the calendar year 25 and 26. So we may see a little bit of decrease, but Woodbury's, you know, when we neighbor and border a city that's that large, that's the fire numbers they get for structure fires that we're going to. Those are confirmed structure fires that we're going to assist them with. Again, got called to Stillwater 4 times, Oakdale 12, North St. Paul once, Newport once, Maplewood once, Lower St. Croix Valley 3 times, Cottage Grove 3 times, and Bayport 4 times. So the other thing too that
What does Lower St. Croix Valley include?
Lower St. Croix Valley includes Afton, Lakeland, St. Croix Beach. They go all the way down to Denmark Township. So they have a large area they cover as well.
When it happens and there's an aid that's provided or received, is there a reimbursement process from one state to the other, or is it literally mutual aid, we're there to help?
Mutual aid, we're there to help. We need their resources on an incident just as much as they need ours. We have inter-county mutual aid agreements in place with Washington County, the metro area, western Wisconsin, St. Croix County. If these are long duration incidents where we're, getting the state involved and things like that, that's when we start looking at reimbursements for time and equipment time. But with the way our auto aid agreements work now, it's just, we provide resources and we ask for resources when we need it. Just a quick update on our operations and our fleet. We want to provide the numbers just so you at a quick glance, you kind of see where we stand with the vehicles we have in place. Obviously, we've done a really good job of having a vehicle replacement fund and funding these things and taking care of these long-term pieces of equipment. But this gives you a snapshot of kind of where our fleet fell in 2024. One of the things I do want to point out in the slide there, last year we were able to purchase 2 brand new gear washer extractors from the legislation public safety aid. We had those installed, and those are great pieces of equipment that we added to help clean our equipment and keep our firefighters a little safer with getting rid of the carcinogens out of their gear following a call.
All right, next, we'd like to talk about our training a little bit. So all of our fire department staff participate in regularly scheduled training. It's typically every other Monday night. The topics are based on the Minnesota Board of Fire Training and Education, and we impose those standards equally between our paid-on-call and our career staff, so we hold everybody the same standard, which is important to maintain consistency in our operations. And so last year, in addition to the Monday evenings, so included is the Monday evenings, but we also held additional training as well. And so we had 116 scheduled training events last year, which equated to 4,212 personnel hours, individual people hours that our firefighters spent training last year. So within the scope of our training, we participate in quarterly medical training. It's part of our EMS recertification process. We are very fortunate that we have 2 of our staff that are certified by Regions, who is our medical direction, to teach those classes in-house. So they're very specialized to the way that we do business and by also accomplishing the mission and the goals of the training itself. And then last year we sent 3 new paid-on-call recruits to the Ramsey County Fire Academy. We've been partnering with the Ramsey County Fire Academy for a couple years now. It's a very successful program, very high accomplishment rate, and we're very pleased with the product that they are able to put out. So, in that training, they were able to successfully complete all the certifications they needed to become licensed firefighters. And those 3 individuals are still on the department today, and they're doing very well. We appreciate them very much.
The other thing I want to point out, it's not in the report, but these 400 or 4,200 plus training hours are on top of the shift hours that our firefighters are required to work as well. Now, some of them do get some of their training while they're on shift, but the majority of those hours are on top of that too. So the demands on our paid-on-call staff and our career staff, but the demands on our paid-on-call staff are pretty high. And like I mentioned before, we have a great roster that is meeting those and exceeding those every year. And it's just kind of a testament to our current level of staffing and who we have on our roster. They're definitely putting in the work behind the scenes and in the training to really allow us to continue to elevate our service level within the community.
So last year, we recognized the need in our community, in our region, to join the Washington County Fire Rescue Dive Team. So the Fire Rescue Dive Team is made up of fire departments in Washington County, and they include Hudson, Wisconsin into that group, with the river involved. And they train on a regular basis to provide dive rescue services to Washington County and the surrounding area. We have firefighters in our organization that were already trained divers, and so we felt like that resource alone, plus the 33 lakes that we have in our city, was a very great potential that we may need the rescue dive team at some point. And so we allocated resources and staff to join that team, which include some of the individuals named there, all of them named there. And then they're continuing their training to be licensed rescue divers. In the future, as as needed, they will respond as part of the dive team to the county and provide that asset as a part of our mutual aid plan.
Through the State Board of Firefighter Training and Education, we receive a training reimbursement annually that's allocated to our department. It's based on roster size. I believe this year it's roughly $250 per firefighter we have on roster that we'll get back from the state when we submit training invoices to them. I wanted to add this slide this year just so you kind of had a better idea of what we're looking at when we get that and the kind of dollars that this program's brought in. In fiscal year '24, the fire department received $14,879 in training reimbursement awards from this state program. Since 2014, the fire department has received over $100,000 back on training costs. And the great thing for us too is this looks at providing, when we bring in an outside instructor, it's covered. When we purchase a car to cut up, it covers those costs. And the other nice thing too, now that we do have career staff and we have to be mindful of overtime and backfilling shifts when they go out to training, that any overtime coverages that we encounter, we can submit for reimbursement as well. So it's a great program that's out there. We're allocated a certain amount based on our roster, but then towards the end of the fiscal year, so in June, anything we submit, and if typically the state reallocates dollars if departments don't fully utilize their award or don't submit anything, they do a reallocation. We've been very fortunate over the past couple of years to take advantage of that reallocation. So, and we'll continue to do so as long as that program exists.
Looks like this last year was about a 30%, 40% increase over previous average years.
Yeah, last year was the first year that they are now doing an annual reimbursement. They used to do it on the biennium with the state budget that they would, every other year would do the redistribution of dollars.
Okay.
Now they're doing it annually, so that's one of the big reasons for the jump as well.
All right, we're gonna shift gears a little bit and talk about the fire prevention and code enforcement aspect of the fire department. So, the fire prevention division was established in 2021 when the city hired a full-time fire inspector. And since then, we've continued to maintain fire inspections and public education and safety on a regular basis in the city. And so what that means is that we conduct fire code enforcement through inspections and pre-plans. I review all permit applications and plans for fire suppression and detection systems in new and existing buildings. And that, as the city continues to grow, that number continues to increase every year as those plans continue to come in. We conduct all the inspections related to permits and plans. So think about the Amira project. I think that building itself has generated 20 fire code review inspections on site as that project continues to go on. So as the city continues to grow and those projects become more frequent, my time spent out in the field doing those things is also going to increase. Our shift staff, they, in an effort to first and foremost familiarize themselves with the profile of businesses and buildings in our city, but secondly to increase safety, they go out as part of their daily routine, they go out and do business safety, we call them pre-plans or business safety inspections. And so we educate them on basic or common fire code violations. They go out and they document, they get a tour of the building or business from a representative on site, and then they come back and they provide that information to me, and I can go out and do any enforcement that's necessary, follow-ups and so on and so on. So it's a twofold program. It gets our staff out in the field to get them familiar with the buildings and the things that we have going on, but it also gives us an opportunity to increase safety. So some of the things that we're finding now, especially in 2024 compared to other years, is we're finding some turnover in some of our business space. And what that means is sometimes we walk into a warehouse space, for example, and it's completely changed, and there's something going on there that maybe shouldn't be, or is not done up to the code standard. And so it gives us that opportunity to make contact with that business owner, provide them the information that they need to follow through with permits and applications and inspections to make sure that they're operating their business within the scope of the fire code and the city's zoning and compliance and things. With On the plan review side, the fire department has an excellent relationship with the building side of the city, with the planning department and building inspections. We all work together very well in making sure that we're providing a consistent message with new construction and rezoning of existing businesses.
One of the cool things we get to do is participate in all the community events. It's great that we have such a strong outpouring of support for the events within the city. I do think it's very important that we get to go out and interact with our residents and our business owners, non-emergency response wise. I think that's where we're able to get ahead of the game there and really develop better relationships. We'll go out and visit our daycares. We hosted our first fire department open house last year here. We'll do that again. We will continue to participate in Light Up Lake Elmo, 4th of July parade, National Night Out, all the big events that we do. It's really, that's the fun part for me and all of our staff, to clean the trucks up and get them out and just get out with our residents. We don't take that lightly, and we want to make sure that we continue to help and support those the best we can. Last year, we saw 3 retirements. 2 of them we just recognized here at our last meeting, but firefighter Robin Goodsby retired with 14 years of service. Woody Glanzer, our chaplain, retired with 11 years of service. And support services, former firefighter Richard Sachs Jr. retired with 27 years of service. So we want to make sure that we acknowledge them. And for Woody and JR, we're going to honor them at our badge pinning ceremony for our staff here in June as well. But what makes our department great is our staff, and as we continue to retain quality firefighters, last year Wally, Brett, and Nate all reached a 5-year milestone with our fire department. We need their experience, we need them around as long as we can, and having, hitting these milestones, especially the 5-year milestone, is really important for us. We need to keep making strides with our retention of our paid-on-call staff, and keeping these guys around, supporting them, and having our firefighters be active and have opportunities for them around here is really important. One of the other things that makes our department great is the fact that we have other firefighters that are either currently on other fire departments or have just been in the fire service for a long time. So in 2024, we saw Jeremy Penman hit his fire service 25-year milestone. I hit 20 years last August. Firefighter Matt Watt hit 15 years. Nate Wagner, 10 years in the fire service overall. And Joe Hathaway, 5 years of fire service overall. So we want to make sure we continue to do a good job to hit when our staff hit these 5, 10, 15, 20-year milestones. Wherever they started with, it means that they've got a wealth of experience that they're offering our fire department. Last year, we appointed Andrew Lilly, Jordan Thone, and Nick Rosenberger to firefighter EMT, and Brian Chapman early in the year was promoted to a career position. Again, just a way for us to acknowledge those accomplishments of those staff. Last year, we saw a wealth of donations and grants that were provided to the fire department. We were awarded a CenterPoint Energy Community Safety Grant, which allowed us to purchase that fast rescue board. And we were also awarded a donation of the fast fire suppression device that's in mine and Anthony's vehicles. That was supported by the Lake Elmo Rotary and the St. John's Masonic Lodge out of Stillwater. We also received a large dollar memorial donation from the Raleigh family after the passing of Don that went to us, and we're using that for a project within the station. We're very fortunate with the support that we get from our community. And again, we continue to look at the importance of community risk reduction and education throughout the city. We'll continue to put an emphasis on our open house. We took delivery and put in service new apparatus last year, our boat one and our utility one. At the end of the last year, we recruited 8 more paid-on-call firefighters. I think that's a huge testament to what we've got going on with our staff and our department. and then provide the equipment and staff training to support the county fire dive team. So what's next for us? You know, I think we continue to make updates to our equipment maintenance system. We just recently installed our equipment decon machine. That's gonna help continue to reduce our exposure to carcinogens and keep our gear and our firefighters, keep our gear clean and our firefighters healthy. We're already facilitating community CPR and AED classes. We have our first one coming up to a local business here in 2 weeks, where they're gonna teach their entire staff and certify their entire staff for CPR. We're gonna roll this out to bigger groups and neighborhood groups after that course. We'll continue to host an open house focusing on our public safety partners and risk reduction. And
Can you
then
tell me who that business is so I know where I need to be if something happens to me?
South end of town, Growing Explorers, yeah. Yep, they're gonna be training all their staff here in a couple weeks, and that's just it's a really great thing we can do, because we have Joe Hathaway, who's one of our career firefighters, but he's also a certified CPR instructor, can go provide that service, and the only charge to that business is the cost of the cart. You know, we don't, they're on shift, we can provide that service for them. They have to teach so many classes and hours a year to maintain their certification as instructor anyway, so we want them to be teaching and getting out there. And the other thing that we're gonna kick off later this year is a community-wide smoke and carbon monoxide replacement program. I've already been in contact with the American Red Cross and Washington County for the past few months on how we can kind of get this going. I think there's a few targeted areas in town that we can start with and then build from there. It's gonna take a little bit to get this rolling, and have to talk to Sarah about a few things, but I think it's really important. We've already seen we know the impact smoke and CO alarms make in our community. But one of the big pushes too is I think a lot of us think that I live in a brand new house. Well, how long have you really lived in that house? You know, some of our newer neighborhoods are getting closer to that 8, 9, 10-year mark where we now need to start replacing all those smoke alarms that are in these homes. And that's a big push, and that's a piece of information that we need to really start hitting harder for some of our newer developments, because they're not that new anymore. So that program will kick off hopefully mid-year towards Q3 and really get that out and make that something we continue to do. With that, that's our annual report. There's always, you know, as I'm up here, I'm thinking of a few more slides I need to add for next year. There's a ton of information that we have out there. But I did want to give you the time if you have some specific questions about anything, or you're always welcome to get a hold of me at any time.
Thank you very much, Chief Kalis and Lieutenant Chief. Appreciate that annual report. All right. Next on the agenda, new financial software.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Is that the right view, or
No.
how do I do this? There we go. I'm gonna apologize in advance. I have a cold again. Let's see if we can muddle through this. This item is back in front of you. After last meeting, we had some follow-up regarding the contract terms that we attempted to work through with the company. So just a really brief recap. We are looking at replacing our financial software. It is, when I say financial software, it is an enterprise resource planning software. It covers, I mean, this touches pretty much every department in the city. And we are also adding the HR module to this as well. So I had provided an overview of some of the processes that were affected. I had also provided our purchasing process. So we ended up kind of doing an overall industry review for the software that is most used in our area. We narrowed it down to 2, had in-person full-day demonstrations with those top 2. And after those, we narrowed it down. Our recommended software purchase is for BSNA. So the upfront costs would be a little over $120,000, and then annual fees close to $45,000 per year. Some of the things that we had talked about at the last meeting, the contract terms, and maybe Sarah's probably a little more well-versed in these things than I am, but things like liability and, what's the other word, Sarah? The
Indemnification?
indemnification, thank you. They were not interested in budging on those. They had initially, actually, refused to change the terms of the actual annual increases. But after some pretty aggressive groveling today, they did actually change to a flat 4% increase year over year. So we did get that concession from them. I had also added in this month's packet, or this week's packet, some commentary from the city auditor regarding the importance of having integrated software. And that's kind of my quick summary. I'd be happy to attempt to answer any questions.
Any questions for Marissa? Doesn't look like there's any questions. You must have done a really good job.
I guess, it's at 4%, man. I begged. I threatened tears.
No,
It was.
you negotiated well, is what you did.
Did we ever know what Roseville has for their term, for their cost increase?
For their increase?
Yeah.
You know, I looked at a few of the cities. I don't recall right off the top of my head, do you? Yeah.
And council is satisfied with the changes that were made that were more in your realm?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, they did not change anything on the insurance or indemnification, which are kind of my two big things, and I think the League of Minnesota Cities Attorney also had commentary on those, so it's kind of a take it or leave it situation. I mean, I kind of saw it as they were giving us the easy things, like, you know, we said if we have a dispute, it needs to be venued in Minnesota, and they said, oh, sure, that's not a problem. Well, it's not hard to change.
Yeah.
And no skin off of their nose. So, yeah, I mean, they did make a few changes, but they were pretty trivial. But I think it's kind of at this point a take it or leave it situation.
With that, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the customer agreement to purchase BS&A software and the integrated payments addendum and authorize finance director to enter into these related product and service contracts for purchase of integration and process development related to the software purchase.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. I'll just say thank you for going back to look at the things we discussed at the last meeting and for being able to negotiate a kind of flat fee that I think will help budget into the future years. I'm looking forward to the efficiencies and accuracy that this will provide, finance for the city of Lake Elmo, and help out with our audit situations and make sure that we're doing what we need to do to be transparent with our residents and our taxpayers.
Absolutely. I would also add, after Nick.
Councilmember Dragisich.
I just want to say, you know, I looked through all this information in a brief conversation with Clarissa today, and they went through a fairly exhaustive process to vet this out and make sure that, you know, they had the system that they believe the city needs, will serve our needs for the next 10 years. And they're the professionals in this regard. They have to work with it every day. And I just want to appreciate the detailed process you went through and the analysis that resulted in your recommendation.
Thank you. If I may, Mayor, I also meant to point out that this really does tie directly into our recently adopted strategic plan and the ability to be strategic about our financial goals. And this is I fully recognize this is a very large investment, but it is going to help a lot in reaching that.
Great. Councilmember Holtz.
I would also say I definitely appreciate the, whatever negotiation tactic was used. For both the decrease in the rate and elimination of, or the higher option with the CPI. The 1% difference in years 1 and 2 is not as significant impact, but by years 10 and 15 and 20, it is. It absolutely is. So I appreciate figuring that out. And I want to be able to be in a place where the software that you have is the software you need, not the Cadillac, not the Yugo, but, way past the Yugo. So hopefully that is. And it is. This is a significant investment. So I think from the resident side, from the customer service side, there's going to be expectations on their end as well that this is going to have the effect that we are hopefully presuming will happen. I have every expectation it will.
Mayor was pointing out that I don't know what the Hugo or
Yugo
is.
You're dating yourself.
Oh, I've never seen one. My parents
know
told
it.
me about it.
Oh, boy.
I'm sure Councilmember Dragisich has.
3 cylinders and well.
They have. Being a Croatian,
All right, we digress. Councilmember Hearn, yes.
So, I certainly had some concerns with this at first. The initial expense, not quite understanding all those. I do appreciate the answers to those questions. I just was really trying to understand. Obviously, this is a pretty big investment. It's a pretty big change from what we currently have. And some of the conversations we had, I was looking at Roseville and trying to make sense of, okay, well, their population relative to ours and the timing of all this. I do really want to be supportive of the staff and help make sure that you guys have what you need to do your jobs. I appreciate you listening to me and my concerns as well, and going back and negotiating. You potentially saved the city $500,000 today if this is something that we hold on to for 30 years. That's, I'd say, a day, half day, however many hours you spent, pretty well spent. So thank you for doing that, and for taking me serious when I had that conversation today. Because again, I just those 1-2% can make a pretty big difference over time. I was looking at the CPI stuff as well that we were talking about, and that was a good realization for me as well, that from a SaaS company standpoint, it's typically I think the average is closer to 10 to 12% increase, right? And understanding where they're coming from their business side, that helped me grasp this 5% or now 4% number a little bit better. Just looking at the last 10 years of the CPI for the the all urban consumers that they said it was based off of before. Typically well below 5. Would it have been nice to be able to have the lower of the two? Sure. But I think, we can only ask, and I think you met them somewhere in the middle with that, and I appreciate it.
All right, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve the customer agreement to purchase BNSA software and the integrated payments addendum, and authorize finance director to enter into these related product and service contracts for purchase of integration and process development related to the software purchase, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, number 12, franchise fees, ordinances 2025-03 through 2025-08. Resolutions 2025-021 through 2025-028.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We do have Bob Vos from Kennedy and Graven online to get us up to date on where we're at with our franchise fees.
Mayor and Council, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Thanks for letting me be here virtually. I've been out in a meeting out in the western suburbs tonight, and so it was going to be a tough lift to get all the way across the metro to be there in person. I wish I was, but that was not going to work well. So I'm here to present on the utility franchises and associated franchise fee ordinances that you have in front of you. Quickly, I want to be sensitive to your time. In the way of background, you have in front of you 3 franchise ordinances. Franchises are unique animals that cities use to regulate utilities. Franchises are both ordinances. They get enacted as ordinances, but they're also contracts. They get negotiated with the utilities as contracts. So you have 3 of those in front of you, one with CenterPoint, a gas franchise with CenterPoint, and then 2 franchises with Northern State Power, more commonly called Xcel Energy, a gas franchise with Xcel, and a electric franchise with Xcel. And then associated with those 3 franchises, you have in front of you 3 franchise fee ordinances. And those are just separate ordinances that would implement the franchise fees that the 2 utilities would collect and pay to you. I think staff has previously gone through the details of those franchise fee ordinances and the franchise fee arrangement. The target goal that staff had for those franchise fees was about $500,000 in new revenue to the city, and those franchise fee amounts reflected in the fee ordinances are intended to produce initially that amount of revenue from the 2 companies and their customer bases. So I wanted to talk, though, about the franchises, the contracts with the 2 companies, and talk to you a little bit about a couple of examples of the way franchises get negotiated. As I've said, they get enacted as ordinances, but they are truly contracts. And I will tell you, in the case of Xcel, as is quite common, has been much more engaged, I would say, in negotiating terms and going through terms. I believe Xcel, I think, has a representative, Mike, who's in the room there with you tonight. I was talking with Mike and his boss, the head of government relations at Xcel, and their legal counsel just a couple of hours ago about some additional negotiating positions that the company had that we worked through and resolved for purposes of tonight. So these are truly negotiated, and they're in the case of Xcel, there are quite a few provisions that they seek to negotiate. The very quick background is, and I suspect you all or many of you on the council understand this, but let me just say it for the benefit of the public. The legislature in Minnesota in the late 90s authorized cities to adopt comprehensive right-of-way regulatory ordinances, and the vast majority of the cities in the state did just that. Lake Elmo did that. You have a right-of-way management ordinance. Your ordinance and most of the ordinances in the state are based on a model that the League of Cities promulgated and sent around. Each city made its own little adjustments, but they are very similar across the state. Franchises then, in turn, are used basically to iron out the details, the ambiguities, the spaces, as it were, that are left in a city's right-of-way ordinance and in the state law that authorize that right-of-way ordinance. So franchises are used to fill in the gaps, fill in the details. And as is common, your city, in our case, I working with your staff, started from another model ordinance that the League of Cities produced, a model franchise ordinance. And so that was the document that we started with in discussing franchises with both Xcel and with CenterPoint. I will tell you, because it is most certainly true, that the League's starting point, the starting point franchise ordinance that we started with, includes in it from the get-go some compromises on provisions that are in a standard right-of-way ordinance. So we started with a document that makes a few compromises in favor of utilities, things that the League knew the utilities were looking for and didn't feel to the League like being much of a concession. From that starting point, Xcel has asked for a number of further modifications or changes to the way your right-of-way ordinance would otherwise apply. And I guess I want to give you 2 examples of the way we've negotiated compromises on things that are addressed in your right-of-way ordinance. And I will say this first issue, which deals with an obligation for utilities to relocate their facilities to accommodate a public project. You're going to build a new road, you're going to widen a road, you're going to extend new utilities to a new area of your city that's growing. In any of those scenarios, you might require Xcel or CenterPoint to have to move their facilities to accommodate that project. That's something that's addressed in your right-of-way ordinance, and what your ordinance says, and it's authorized by state law, is that if the utility is required to move to accommodate a public project, a legitimate public project, and there's some criteria for that in the rules. If it's to accommodate a public project, that relocation has to be done at the utility's expense. Excel always, in these franchise negotiations, asks for a limitation on that. They ask that they not be required to pay for relocations if a city asks for that to happen with the same area, the same set of facilities within a 5-year period. In other words, we've asked them to move facilities on 2nd Street at some point, and then within 5 years, we ask them to move those same facilities again. They ask that they not be required to pay for that second move, that's something that we, the city, should have planned for, and thus we should pay for. Their ask is always that the window be 5 years. In this case, I've negotiated that down to a 3-year window. So in other words, it's only if we ask them to move the same facilities within a 3-year period that we would be required to pay. And in addition to that, because of some points that your city engineer has brought to my attention, because you in fact do have areas of your city that are growing, and you do from time to time need to extend public facilities, sewer and water most obviously, that extending sewer and water would not be a trigger for the city having to pay to relocate Excel or Centerpoint a second time. So the ask was 5 years. If it's within 5 years, the city pays. We've limited that down to within 3 years, and it doesn't apply if it's for a city sewer or water extension project. So that's one area, one example of the kind of negotiation that goes on in these franchises. The other example I wanted to give you, because it's sort of frankly near and dear to my heart, is that your city, like, again, most cities that have right-of-way management ordinances, you require utilities, when they're going to use your right-of-way, to come in and pull a permit. They apply for the permit, they describe the project, there's the opportunity for oversight from your engineering folks or from your public works folks or both. There's a permitting process, and part of that permitting process is the payment of permit fees. Excel always, in a situation where they're newly being asked to pay franchise fees, asks that any permit fees be waived. That, in other words, their new franchise fee obligation, which in their view will always greatly exceed any permit fees they would pay, they ask that their franchise fee payments offset and allow for the waiver of any permit fees they might be required to pay in a given year. I, in this case, have accepted that, but have greatly limited it. What they normally ask for is a waiver of all permit fees. So if they had to pull a building permit, they have asked for a waiver of those fees. If they have a zoning permit they have to ask for, they've asked for a waiver of those fees. Any and all fees are what they seek to waive in exchange for the payment of franchise fees. In the language before you, the only fees that you'd be waiving are right-of-way permit fees. Any other kinds of fees that the company would incur and have to pay to you would still be owed despite their payment of franchise fees. There are other examples that I certainly could go through, but I wanted to give you a flavor for the way these negotiations happen. And I would say that the issues that Excel has raised, and there are a number, are issues that they always raise. They always raise the issues they've raised here with cities. And in many, many circumstances, I should have said in introducing myself, I serve as city attorney for 8 cities, but I also serve as the general counsel to the Suburban Rate Authority, which deals with, as I think you know, utility matters across the metro area with Centerpoint, Excel, and other utilities that do business in the metro. And so I have eyes into franchise negotiations with lots and lots of cities around the metro and throughout the state of Minnesota. And they always ask for these concessions or these changes to the model franchise. Many cities agree to all of them. In this case, we have not agreed to all of them. We have compromised, we've negotiated in the way that I have described with the examples that I've given you. So I can stop there. I don't know if staff wanted to say anything more than what's been presented previously with respect to the franchise fee ordinances, the ordinances that will require the payment of fees on gas services and electric services that will generate the revenues that I talked about. But that's something that primarily your finance director and staff have worked on. So I can stop there and answer any questions that folks may have. And as I said, I think Mike, Excel's government relations representative, is also in the room, and if so, I think is willing to answer questions.
Mr. Wilhelmy, do you have anything to say, or you just here for questions?
Mr. Mayor and council members, Mike Wilhelmy with Xcel Energy. Thanks for the opportunity to address you. I'm kind of surprised to say this, but I pretty much agree with everything that your attorney, who I've been negotiating with for months now, agree with what he has said. We do have disagreements about a great many things, but this agreement, I think, represents a best compromise we feel that we could get for our business and for our ratepayers.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Wilhelmy? Thanks. Any questions for council? Hearing none. I'll entertain a motion. Oh, you do have a question.
For staff.
Oh, for staff.
I'm curious, because as I recall at our last workshop, we recommended that if this were to happen, that it be dedicated to the Parks Fund. So I'm curious because I understand funds can still be reallocated based upon needs that arise. I'm just curious, this has it as Fund 409 for future street improvement projects. I'm just wondering the change.
Yeah, and my apologies, I just did not recall that was a really firm decision. We did have some sort of fluctuations, if you will, towards the end of the year as we were doing the budget and the levy and how we were allocating that new capital levy. And so what I had done is taken the money out of the infrastructure fund, the original plan, and kind of shifted things around. So I can tell you, A, we can move it anytime, and B, we really need to start building up that 409 fund. So if we want to do that now, we can certainly do that. It was just kind of where I thought we needed the money the most.
Councilmember Dragisich.
Yeah, I had the same question, and as I thought about it, and the direction we're trying to go in, I was going to suggest that we provide some reasonable split between the two funds. We can move them without question, but it's, kind of what was our intent as we adopt this, and my thought was something like 25% to park and 75% to the infrastructure reserve fund, which will help us reduce our borrowing costs going forward and get that outstanding debt down, which is something I've been talking about.
You have.
But I just thought there's some split, and I'm open for discussion on that. I know we did say the park fund, but putting $500,000 a year in the park reserve fund seems like a lot of money based on our capital improvement needs in other areas. And I just throw that out for consideration of my fellow elected officials.
Okay. So as it's written in the motion now, it goes 100% to,
The 409 infrastructure reserve. So it would be a revision of resolution 2025-27. The final paragraph, we would just revise that to a percentage to each of those
Okay.
two funds.
all right. Thank you.
And that is going to be the fourth motion.
Thank you.
Right. Cool. Well, we gotta get 3 before we get to that one, right?
Yeah, motion to adopt ordinances 2025-03, 2025-04, and 2025-05, granting Northern States Power and CenterPoint Energy permission to construct, operate, repair, and maintain in the city of Lake Elmo, Minnesota, electric and/or gas distribution systems and transmission lines, including necessary poles, lines, fixtures, and
Pertinences.
I've never heard that word in my life, appurtenances for the furnishing of electric and/or gas energy to the city, its inhabitants, and others, and to use the public grounds and public ways of the city for such purposes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Discussion. Councilmember Holtz.
I was just gonna offer a thank you to both our council for this and to Excel for, obviously, these discussions are not new for both of you, because you do it for other cities as well. So I just appreciate that. In this case, clearly there are ongoing items that keep coming up, but I think the 3 years is reasonable as well as one example. But I appreciate the work that was done and to find ways to make sure that we were able to get this to the floor tonight. So, thank you for that.
Councilmember Dragisich.
I just want to point out for the benefit of our residents and businesses who are listening and thinking, oh boy, another fee. The purpose of this fee, though, is to help us fund improvements to the city that potentially would be otherwise funded with debt, incurring interest costs beyond, what the cost of those improvements are. And so the long-term benefit is it actually saves us money as opposed to the current process of borrowing every time we have a major capital improvement, whether it be for streets or parks or buildings or otherwise, because we can move these funds around. And so the long-term logic is solid in this case and actually saves our residents money.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for, Excel coming to the table and having the discussions and making some concessions on, we always know what we'd like to have, and we always know that that's, there's gonna be some concessions there. So appreciate all parties doing their part and pushing this forward. I think it's a good thing for the city and the residents moving forward, as Councilmember Dragisich indicated. With that, I'll call the question. I'm not going to repeat the whole thing, but I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor of adopting ordinances 2025-03, 04, and 05, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion to adopt ordinances 2025-06, -07, and -08, implementing franchise fees on Northern States Power Company and CenterPoint Energy for providing electric and/or gas service within the city of Lake Elmo.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on this one? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of adopting ordinances 2025-06, -07, and -08, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Motion to adopt resolutions 2025-21 through 2025-26, authorizing publication of franchise and franchise fee ordinances by title and summary.
Second.
Call the question. All those in favor of the motion to adopt resolution 2025-21 through 2025-26, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion to adopt resolution 2025-27, committing franchise fee revenues to a specific purpose that we will soon be amending.
I have revised language if you'd like.
Support.
We have a motion and a second. Is there a friendly amendment?
Curious what, a recommendation for how to proportion it out or just for verbiage?
Well, I plugged in for now 75 and 25, so if there's a different percentage you'd like.
So that's 75 in the infrastructure reserve 409?
Yep.
I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong, because we don't know what we don't know, right? We know from our CIP that both those have necessary needs coming up. Councilmember Dragisich is right. This is for the purpose of saving long-term debt and interest costs. Whether it's 25, 75, 1/3, 2/3, I don't think, no matter what, there's there's gonna be something that's gonna shift at some point. In the year 2028 or 29, we might need to shift something because a shade structure at one of the parks ended up costing more than we thought.
Councilmember Jurisic.
Trying to be a deal broker here, maybe we go 50-50 because we can shift the funds around as needed. And as Councilor Holt said, invariably we will do that because projects will come up through our CIP and other funding sources will arise, and we'll need to shift this around to serve the best needs of our community. We're not locked in stone, but maybe 50-50 strikes a balance that majority of us can live with.
Are you proposing an amendment to the motion?
Well, I was looking for shaking heads that said yes before we.
Well, I don't know that I can discuss on that since it hasn't been amended and seconded, but,
I'll make a motion to amend our motion to have the franchise fees deposit 50% of the funds in Fund 409 and 50% in
405.
405. Yeah.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. I'm in favor of that, just because I know that there will be some fluidity, but to keep it in that ballpark, no pun intended, would be, I think, a good place to start.
The only thing I'm gonna add is, and again, the percentages don't, I'm not too concerned about those. I'm just glad that we're allocating it to specific funds, that we had that conversation before. Obviously, it is a fee or a tax, and I agree, you know, it's a responsible way to do this, but it's also transparent, which I like. So it's nice to know that we can fluctuate. Percentage doesn't matter so much, just knowing that we're allocating it to specific funds that are gonna be to the benefit of the entire community, I just think is a great thing with, I should say, is a nice aspect of the franchise fees that I can go along with.
Agreed. All right. First of all, I'll call the question on the amendment to the motion. All those in favor of dispersing into funds 409 and 405, please signify at 50% each, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The amendment passes. Then I will call the question on the motion, original motion with the amendment in place. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Resolution 2025-020-27, committing franchise fees to revenue to 409 and 405 is approved. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, council reports.
No report.
Councilmember Holtz.
The Lake Elmo Airport Advisory Commission had a meeting previous Monday. I attended along with Councilmember Cragness. We had multiple discussions throughout there. West Lakeland Township provided information on their history, but also create a long-term plan for what the group is hoping to accomplish along with staff for the next year. So there's gonna be some events, multiple ways of education to the community, definitely having some outreach, and I think there's gonna be some process improvement opportunities as well. And I will be co-chairing the commission along with Luke Peterson, who is a pilot. He represents the user side, and I will represent the community side.
Fantastic. Saturday, I was invited along with Mayor Ann Burt to give a short presentation and answer questions related to water in the East Metro to the Washington County Republican Group. It was fairly well attended. It was, they had a lot of good questions, and I think he's, given what we have and supporting them with some information related to what we have on our website for all residents to take a look at, I think was appreciated. So that was time well spent on Saturday. Councilmember Hearn.
No report.
No report.
Staff reports.
No report. No report.
No report.
No report.
An update on the Old Village Gardens. We are meeting with the county on Thursday regarding some tree plantings and the improvements that we're suggesting. They do have some limits on some of the trees that we are talking about, so we're hoping to get a few more details on Thursday. The two northeast gardens, I've determined, so that'd be in the parking lot on 36th and Lake Elmo of the church. I determined they're not actually in the road right away. We do not have an agreement, so I've reached out to the church and I'm hoping to learn a little bit more about the future of those two gardens.
On
So,
their, by their parking lot?
yeah, they're in their parking lot.
Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
thanks.
No report. No report.
No report.
All right, I think next on, for city council, we have a workshop next week, and we'll be discussing utility financial management plan updates and discussing the definition of trails and sidewalks, very riveting discussion points. So we expect you to all tune in for that. With that, I'll adjourn this evening's meeting. Thank you, and be safe out there.